What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Fluffy Cloud Top 10, our monthly video series where I go through games and talk about them and why I love them. And this particular month, we're going to talk all things Kirby because I just got done wrapping up my playthrough of every single mainline Kirby game. I have played every single one of them, and I want to rank them. At least 1 through 10. There's 13 mainline games, and because this is Fluffy Cloud Top 10, we're only going to rank the best 10 of those. I can definitely give my thoughts on the bottom 3 after the fact. Now, there is a caveat to this particular top 10. There is, of course, there's many mainline Kirby series, but there's also been a couple of remakes of the mainline Kirby franchises. 3 of those I actually prefer over the original versions of those games. So what I decided to do is I am incorporating remakes into this list. You will not see a if the remake of a said game is on this list, the original is not going to be on this list. So just to kind of put those rules out in front, like just immediately, like that is not going to be. We're not going to have like 2 of basically the same game on this top 10. I made sure to avoid that. I thought about including Kirby spin-offs on this. I could see where maybe I could have a spin-off or 2 on this list if we were to include that. But bottom line is just that Kirby spin-offs generally are more of a blind spot for me. I have played a lot of them, but I've never beaten them. Like Kirby Epic Yarn, never fully beaten that game. Kirby Canvas Curse, only played like a little bit of that game, never really was into it. I've played Kirby Air Ride, I've played Kirby Stream Buffet, Kirby Stream Course, like played a lot of those games, and like again, maybe 1 or 2 of them would have ended up on this list, but I just felt like, you know what, let's just focus on the mainline Kirby games, and then maybe in the future we'll update this list to include spin-offs that I have missed, or of course, you know, there's plenty more Kirby games to come out in the future, so I'll probably want to include some of my favorites that come out in the future on a list like this. So this is a loose list, but this is the 2023 April 2023 edition of my Fluffy Cloud Top 10 favorite mainline Kirby games. So let's get into it, shall we? The first one is actually kind of works out for me because it's gonna be somewhat related to my feelings about the games that were left off of this list. And that number 10 is Kirby's Dream Land, the very first Kirby game. I enjoyed my time with this game because I forgot that when I picked it up and started playing it, I forgot that it is essentially this particular game has been remade in Kirby Superstar, which is it's called Spring Breeze in that game. But yeah, Kirby's Dream Land is just that same, like, you know, you go through a world, you face a boss, you go through a world, you face a boss. It's really, really straightforward, super simple in nature. This is before Kirby even had copy abilities. And I think because I had such a familiarity with it, I enjoyed it more. It's a fine game. I'm not like in love with it. I think it's, you know, the one thing that you're gonna notice big time on this list is I have a tendency sometimes to prefer newer games over old games. So don't be surprised when you don't see a whole lot of older games on this list, because there's a reason. I was never really that much of an old school gamer. I had, you know, the oldest device I think I owned was a Game Boy Advance. Which is that, you know, maybe speaks to a blind spot for me ultimately. Now don't get me wrong, Game Boy Advance is pretty freaking old anyway, but yeah, just, you know, no SNES. No N64. Did the GameCube come out before or after Game Boy Advance? Because if it came out after or before, then I guess the GameCube would be the oldest device I owned, of Nintendo wise at least. Yeah, I don't know. Whatever. Anyways, so that's my feelings on Kirby's Dream Land. It's really straightforward. I'm not like I didn't really love it, but it was like, oh, this is familiar to me. This is similar boss fights, and it's interesting doing it without any copy abilities. I thought that was interesting. So then to real quick say, this is the only Kirby's Dream Land game on this list. Between in the trilogy of Kirby's Dream Land games, 2 and 3, I played and just didn't really vibe with. I didn't really care for the animal abilities. I was not super into that. I know people like those a lot, and that's probably why they prefer those games over Kirby's Dream Land, and maybe even some more modern Kirby games. I didn't really. I was not really a big fan of them, and so yeah, that's just my current feelings on that. Let's move forward, because that's at least one aspect of the older Kirby games that are not on this list. There's at least one more that I will talk about. I'm just gonna move myself. Gonna fly around the screen a little bit and then move up here, because I forget I also use this webcam for this same like scene on my OBS for my vlogs. I usually move the webcam back down for that. So yeah, there you go. Anyways, number 9, and this is probably the start of like this is definitely a more controversial list than I'd like to. I mean, the controversy is more in like the lower numbers, I would say, overall, but not necessarily a list that's like I'm not with conventional wisdom on some things, and this is one of those games. Kirby Star Allies is number 9 on my list. I like this game a lot. This is the last of the Kirby games I had to play in order to complete my having played and beaten in every single Kirby game. And I get why people don't vibe with it. I think the reasons why I think it's a flawed game is that, yeah, it is super simple in a lot of ways. The levels are just generally very boring in general. Like, there's nothing that really like stands out. Maybe like visually there's some nice stuff, but generally they're just kind of bland. And probably the most egregious aspect of this game is the reuse of music. Like, Kirby is known for such a great score for many of its games. It's just a great soundtrack in general, and I think that the fact that they had to reuse music from past games, like, don't get me wrong, those are great songs, but it's like, oh, but like I think of other games instead of like what's unique to this game. I'm sure that there was a couple of like original songs in there, but none of them were particularly memorable to me. And yeah, I just was thoroughly disappointed with their choice in music throughout this game. That said, why I like this more than Kirby's Dream Land and a couple other games is I actually did like what they did with the copy abilities. I thought it was really interesting that you'd have the regular ability, and then you could like have work with your friend to kind of have like a fire hammer or a ice what's called cutter, and like things like that I feel like that made it a lot more interesting, a lot more fascinating in terms of the different mechanics. Not that hasn't been done in other Kirby games. There's been other games where you could combine abilities, but I just liked how it was done here. I liked the friendship abilities overall, and I actually kind of like the final boss fight in this game, even though I'm typically not the biggest fan of like when gameplay completely changes for the final boss. I kind of just enjoyed it. I got like the spectacle of it, the visuals of that boss fight I thought were a lot of fun, but another one that's like also like super basic and not really like that interesting in terms of gameplay depth, not death. But yeah, so I liked Kirby Star Allies. I thought it was a good time. I thought it's another one of those games that celebrates Kirby, celebrates the franchise, and I enjoy Kirby putting itself on a pedestal in games, which it has been doing a lot as of late. But I don't know, I appreciate it because I think Kirby's great. And so I did enjoy Kirby Star Allies. All right, here we go. Number 8, Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland. So here's the first one of our remakes here. This is the remake of Kirby Adventure, which is the second ever Kirby game. This is how I first played Kirby Adventure, was through the remake. And I thoroughly enjoyed my time with this game. There was another Game Boy Advance game that had my heart with Kirby, a little tease. But this one is so much fun, so freaking iconic. The music is just top notch in this game. Speaking like complete 9-day difference between this and Star Allies. I think the reason why this is as low as it is probably because like I'm not like, I would say like maybe individual worlds stand out, but I feel like overall I don't think that there's any particular levels that stand out. A lot of great boss fights in this game. I like the sun and moon boss fights, obviously iconic. The artist on the roller skates is obviously iconic. I just forget the name. Fighting King DDD in front of the Fountain of Dreams, and but like even like right before that, even the tower of like mini bosses that you fight, like that's always like that's that theming for Kirby games where you have at one point you have like just boss rush stage is just the best. It's always so much fun, and I enjoy the crap out of it so very much. Kirby Nightmare Dreamland is just, to me, is the more modern version. It's the one that, for me, that I first played, and so I have much more of an attachment to. And yeah, I just had an absolute blast with Kirby Nightmare Dreamland, 100%. All right, number 7, Kirby Triple Deluxe. So the 3DS era of Kirby games is probably easily one of the best eras of Kirby. It's a shame because I feel like I really skipped a lot of it. I did buy those games day one when they came out, but I had been kind of like fading out of Kirby for a little while. And so when Kirby Triple Deluxe came out and I started it, I wasn't really enthralled by it initially, and so I kind of put it down and moved away from it. But coming back to it last year and finally beating it, it was just an incredible experience of just like so much fun playing around with the 3D, so many fun levels that incorporated those aspects into it. And yeah, I had a really great time. My only, I think, thing for this is that there's one 3DS game that completely surpassed it and built off of the ideas and did much better with it. And I also felt like the gimmick of this game, which was like the Kirby's like super suction ability, didn't really do much for me. Like it was just fine. Like it like to me, I think it was trying to kind of copy what Kirby's Return to Dreamland did with like its super abilities. This was like just super suction, and it's just kind of like, all right, that's fine. Like it didn't enthrall me. Didn't really like stand out to me in any way, shape, or form. I liked the boss fight a lot with this game too, facing the Queen. And yeah, I had a great time with it. I think it is a underrated Kirby game because it sits in the shadow of another game. But I also could see where people find it rather basic in some ways. But I genuinely like Triple Deluxe. I like it more than Nightmare in Dreamland, which is probably saying something about Kirby Adventure, or at least my feelings about it. But I still generally really enjoyed a lot of I enjoyed Triple Deluxe a lot, and I feel like it's games like that I'm happy they exist because they surprise you so much with how basic it initially looks and then how it builds up. And also, like, man, the colors in this game, just the first world, how colorful it is, and then fighting the super colorful version of Wispy Woods, like, it's so good. I really love Triple Deluxe. All right, here we go. Number 6, Kirby Squeak Squad. This one's an interesting entry here. I think that for a lot of people, this would be lower on a lot of people's lists. But here's the thing about me. I like treasure chests. I like finding chests in Kirby games. That was something that I was first introduced to with Kirby and the Amazing Mirror, and enjoyed that. And so with Kirby Squeak Squad, this was a whole game based off of like going out, finding chests, and then having to find these big chests at the end of some of the levels. I just really, really fucked with that gameplay loop. I loved it so much. I loved going through each of these chests and or going into a level and then figuring out the puzzle to get to each of these chests. And then the prizes in the chests were fun too. Specifically, the type of prize I always enjoyed getting was the spray paint to change the color of Kirby. I think it's always fun where you can go in as different shades of Kirby. It's just a lot of fun there. I thought the boss fights generally were fun, specifically the mini boss fights with the Squeak Squad. I thought were a lot of fun. I enjoyed having to confront them at the end of every single level. I thought that was a really interesting thing. There's just a lot of this game though that I do think is a little forgettable. I think specifically talking about the levels, like the levels I think are not super like stand out. And then I think the boss fight I do remember, which is like the star that you fight at the end after you fight like the head of the Squeak Squad. But I just generally, I think generally there's a lot of this game that is forgettable, even though like thus far like it's one of the games listed here is my favorite gameplay mechanic of going into each level and like basically just searching. Like I love a game that forces me to really explore a level because it's to find all the collectibles, and I think that's what Squeak Squad does really, really well, and that's why I enjoyed it so much. All right, here we go. The top 5 Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe. And this is worth noting. Obviously, if you have been watching if you watched my playthrough of Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe, I highly encourage you to do that. Hey, you could actually watch my original playthrough of Kirby's Return to Dreamland on this channel. I don't think I got rid of it. Maybe I did. I don't know. It's on there though, somewhere under my different username. But for those who are new here, don't know who I am, or have not seen those playthroughs and don't know my thoughts about Kirby's Return to Dreamland, I've been kind of on the record prior to Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe coming out as being not a fan of Return to Dreamland. I just felt like it was super bland, super basic. I did not like the plot. I didn't like many aspects of Return to Dreamland, to the point that is the game that kind of started to steer me away from Kirby, because I felt like they were not, really amazing. They weren't making amazing entries anymore, and I skipped Triple Deluxe. I skipped Planet Robot. A mistake, don't get me wrong, but I was just kind of super bummed with Return to Dreamland at the time. Fast forward though to the release of Deluxe. Now we're in the post like Kirby in the Forgotten Land world, and having replayed the 3DS games or played for the first time the 3DS games, and now I'm returning to Return to Dreamland with this Deluxe version, and I raise my hand and say I'm sorry. I feel like I completely was wrong about Return to Dreamland. I actually really enjoyed my time with it. I think I still have a hang up on this is another one of those Kirby games that I feel like the levels themselves are not that interesting. I don't really enjoy the levels. They're so run of the mill. They don't really do anything interesting, with the exception of the endings to a lot of these levels, because when near the end of every single level, there's a point where you get a super ability, and then the way that they present those super abilities and then have you play around with those super abilities, whether it's smashing a giant hammer on top of like some sort of turret, or using a fire dragon to light a bunch of wood on fire, or swinging down a sword on like a large piece of rope, like anything like that felt so good to play, and I really had such a great time with it. Those were the moments that stood out and were so much fun frequently with that. I think that the levels where you have to kind of like run away from like this void that's gonna consume you, like there's like you have like the super ability, and then you open up like this little star dimension, and you jump into there, and then you're chased by like something that's gonna try to consume you. The running portion of that is a lot of fun. The boss fights for those never really were my favorite. Not that they were hard, they were just the same thing over and over again. And they changed it up with like the type of like the ice version or the fire version of those flying guys. None of it ever thrilled me, and I felt like it was just very like, it felt like you were just doing the same thing over and over again. Anyways, I'm shitting on Return to Dreamland a lot. I still very much loved my experience with it, and I think why Deluxe has lofted itself to number 5 on this list is because I think I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the story a lot more the second time through. I think compared to everything else in the Kirby franchise, it's the most coherent story. It's the one that actually is following a specific character throughout with Magalore, and then you realize that he turned on you and you fight him. It is as basic as that. There's every other Kirby game, there's some sort of cosmic horror that you have to fight, and like you kind of understand why you have to do it, but like you're like, how the fuck did it happen like this? Why does it look like that? What the fuck's going on? Like, there's a lot of questions that you have about Kirby games near the end, even though anyone who's a Kirby fan would just kind of like let it roll off your shoulder and just kind of fight it because it's cool, right? But this is a game that actually, like, you're told straight up, like, hey, you're helping out this guy, and then halfway through the game you realize, oh wait, no, you're actually the bad guy this whole time. We're gonna fight you. Or it's not even halfway through; it's near the end of the game. Anyways, so I enjoy the story for that. I enjoy that that no matter whether you're playing single player or multiplayer, that you will, no matter what, see King DDD and Meta Knight and all of them by your side, and Banana Wildy by your side, even if you don't ever see them throughout the entire adventure if you're playing alone. I enjoy that aspect. But anyways, the other thing that I really love about Return to Dreamland Deluxe specifically, Mary Magdalene is incredible. Like, it's such a celebration of all the mini games in the future, in the history of Kirby. And that it's just this little carnival area where you go around. You are playing the games to collect masks, and then if you get achievements, you build statues in the adventure in the amusement park. Even like the little things, like going around and finding like the little Magalore stickers. I thought that was really cool and the little detail. And the other thing about this game that I liked was Magalore's epilogue. I thought that was incredible. I was frustrated with it at first, but it's just because it's hard. It's a very difficult game because you start out with nothing in your weakest point because you just lost to Kirby, right? And playing as Magalore, and you are now having to rebuild your strength and become a god again. Just everything that in that game, building up to the big boss fight with the giant tree, is super fun. It's super exciting. A very cool way to wrap up a story that, again, compared to everything else in the Kirby franchise, is probably the best. So, really, just such a really well done remake. And as for the game itself, I definitely hold it in a higher regard than in the past. How I felt about it. I guess there is still this part of me that would like still kind of prefers like the gameplay loop of a Squeak Squad, or enjoys the level diversity of like a triple deluxe a little bit more in the Return to Dreamland. But there's the deluxe version specifically. There's just some of it, the edges, that make it such a more complete package that I want to give it the credit that it deserves as a number 5 on this list. All right, number 4, Kirby and the Amazing Mirror. Now, this is probably the most controversial pick out of everything here. For many people, Kirby and the Amazing Mirror is probably one of the worst Kirby games. I sit here and say, you're probably right. But I love it. And it's the Kirby game that made me fall in love with Kirby. It's the one that I played the most as a kid on the Game Boy Advance and had an absolute blast with it. As a kid, I never beat games like that. I never I did seek out to beat a game, but I almost never did because I just had a very limited attention span. But the joy of exploring the world of Kirby and the Amazing Mirror was so fantastic. The music in this game was incredible, by the way. Like Rainbow Route, Candy Constellation, all of those are just, they're so top tier perfect. They're so incredible. But just exploring the world, going to these different areas. You could tackle the order of the bosses however you want. Ultimately, like you can go in reverse order. I'm almost certain, or figure out a way to go in reverse order. There's just so many different routes, so many different pathways to take in that game, and it's so much fun to go into a room and you see a treasure chest, but it's like behind a wall. There's no like immediate access, and then like going into a bunch of different rooms after that, then finding that one like secret door or secret mirror, I guess, because it is mirrors that you're going through. That one secret mirror that you didn't notice before, and going through that and then seeing like, oh, that's the chest I saw earlier, and then going and getting that. Like it's so satisfying. I think they could have been a lot easier on you with like, hey, you don't have to go out and find the map. Like after you discover like a certain amount of rooms, we'll just automatically give you the map, because finding the maps are probably very tedious. But I ultimately didn't really mind it. And also the allies I could see being a problem. They are pretty useless. Even if you call them in to like help you fight a giant boss, it usually just becomes an absolute mess, and all three of them die like way before the boss dies, so you still have to basically take care of that boss on your own. But all that aside, I just had such a good time fighting. Like some of these bosses were so unique, like the fact that like you had the Wispy Woods in this game, but it wasn't Wispy Woods. It was instead this sort of Sphinx-like figure in the middle of a mansion. Like the settings in this game are so freaking good. Like so, like you can have like the basic ice level, but instead it's an ice palace that you're going through, or like I don't know, like there's so many unique settings, so many unique music moments in this game, and so many different chests to collect, which is what I really loved. And look, I'm not the biggest Metroidvania guy, but a Kirby Metroidvania like this, in terms of like being able to kind of move around the world freely and not have it be like a level based structure, I really fucked with. I really, really enjoyed it. And I think it's just the Kirby is a much easier game than Metroid, a much easier game than Castlevania, right? So it's a world that I enjoy exploring stuff in, and I love the idea of doing exploration in a Kirby game, and which I I talked about earlier with Squeak Squad, right? So like I want something more. I want more to it in the future. I know people that Kirby developers at HAL could build on this idea and make it a lot better than what they did with Amazing Mirror. But Amazing Mirror just means a lot to me. It's a game that, again, that as a kid I played it. It's the Game Boy Advance game that I loved probably the most, if I had to be honest, unless I'm forgetting another Game Boy Advance game that I really loved. And yeah, it's just an absolute blast, and I'm hopeful that we could get something similar in the future, but obviously much improved compared to what this ended up being. All right, now the top three, and I don't think this top three is necessarily controversial. And again, I'm not saying that I try to preface this at the beginning of all my Fluffy Cloud top 10s. I'm not saying that these are the best. I'm just saying these are my favorite. This is the ranking of my favorite Kirby games to date. And so, number 3 on this list. Number 2 and number 3 were super, super hard to choose between. Like, there's one that I've always loved and one that is a more recent love. And picking between those two about which one is the best was just always like super, or for like the last, like, I don't know, however long it's been since I played the newest one for me. Or the newer one of the two, I should say. I had so many. I had to really think about like which one do I prefer, and only because I've played through it only once, number 3 on my list is going to be Kirby Planet Robobot. And this probably could be my number 2, easily. I just have only played it once, so I feel like I I have played the other game, the number 2 game, so many more times. I've played it across my life so many more times that I feel like putting Planet Robot ahead of that without having a second playthrough under my belt or third playthrough under my belt, like, that I think is what's holding me back from it being like considered my second favorite. But it is probably the best 2D Kirby game, probably, and it is, has everything to do with how they implement the mechanics of how it's like these enhanced abilities. Like, oh hey, those limited time super abilities in Kirby's Return to Dreamland, how about you basically just have that the entire time? Not quite as powerful as the Return to Dreamland abilities, but you know what I mean. Like, you just have like a upgrade sword or an upgrade fire ability and all this stuff. And how would you solve puzzles in these levels based off of those mech abilities? God, the levels in this game, like, I think the first world is so basic, and it's part of the reason why it took me so long to come back to the Kirby Planet Robot, and then they just pick up and flourish. The fucking casino level where you have the billiard balls rolling at you, the fucking, you know, the freezer level when you have ice cream toppling over you and stuff like that, where or even in those levels where you have to like carry a snowman and place it and create a snowman to get like the collectible, like the music levels, the ones where you like, even like the ones where you're like just out on the street in like a beautiful town and you have like the wildy driving cars that you just have to dodge them. Like, I don't know, there's just so many layers to this game in terms of how creative they are, that is just to die for. It's so good. And even the finale, like, when I first came out of that and beat it for the first time, I didn't think I was that big of a fan of the boss fight, only because, again, what I said earlier, like, I don't usually like when the gameplay completely shifts away from like original Kirby stuff and then has it become like this whole, you know, just new gameplay mechanic introduced, essentially, right? But it was incredible. Like, and it's amazing that it's a callback to Kirby Superstar. That it's just this incredible experience. I love that, and I love that the Hal Bird becomes the Hal Curb. Like, like it's just insane. Like, they do so many things just to make Planet Robot become like the most epic Kirby adventure to date. Like, they just did such a phenomenal job. I think my only like complaint about it is like, I don't like the circle arenas. Like, I there's something about that I just didn't really enjoy. I feel like it's been done quite a few times before, and it's just not something I necessarily love. I rather just be on the 2D plane. So, but that's it. That's the only thing I would really complain about. But Kirby Planet Robot is a masterpiece. It's an absolute masterpiece, and I actually was thinking about, before making this video, doing a second playthrough, just to kind of like be like, let's really definitively see if I can lock this in as my number 2. But I'm just like, you know what, let's just do it now, and we'll see, because we're probably gonna end up updating this in the future, and we'll see if it maybe goes up to number 2. So I kind of hinted at it, but number 2 on this list is Kirby Superstar Ultra, another remake. This is how I experienced Kirby Superstar, and this was my favorite Kirby game up until very recently. I love this game. I love that it's all these little adventures. I love that they're all so different from each other, so that way you feel the difference in the gameplay. But from Great Cave Offensive, where you're going around once again collecting treasure chests, like how I enjoy, to even like the Revenge of the Meta Knight or Revenge of the King, where you have, you know, dialogue between the enemies as you're going through levels. The helper ability, which I personally have always liked, and I love that in this game, like, you get the arena, and then you go through and you beat the arena, but then you get the helper to hero, where you play as the helper in the arena. I think that's the coolest fucking shit. I love that so much. Like, so many really, really exciting moments. Obviously, like Milky Way Galaxy 2, the one where you're going between the planets and you're collecting the abilities and then you have full access to those abilities at all times. Like, just that's such a cool mechanic, and I wish they implemented something like that into like a full blown Kirby game. But I can understand why people would be frustrated with like not having those abilities straight up. It might be too easy at that point though too. Like, I don't know. It's whatever. I enjoy it a lot. I enjoy so many aspects of this. So many iconic songs from this game. Just an iconic soundtrack overall. Kirby's Triumphant Return might still be my favorite Kirby song to date, which is the credit sequence after Milky Way Galaxy. Yeah, it's just done incredibly well. And granted, Kirby Gourmet Race is also it's probably the most iconic Kirby song. If it may not be your favorite, you can't argue how famous that song is at this point. But yeah, it's a fantastic game, and I want to see something similar to this again. Like, hey, do you have like a mashup of ideas that you can't really put into one Kirby game, so why not like split it up across a bunch of different adventures and just put it out as a compilation of sorts? I would love to see them do something like that. And again, I just really, really love Kirby Superstar Ultra. It is my favorite. It was once my favorite, up until Kirby and the Forgotten Land. I'm a 3D platformer guy at heart. I am someone that prefers 3D platformers over 2D platformers all day, every day, especially with Mario. I love almost every single 3D Mario game, and I'm not the biggest fan of the 2D Mario games overall. I do have some that I really like, but overall, it's not a franchise that I really care about in that way. And Kirby I've always cared about, despite it being a 2D platformer. I loved Kirby. And the fact that when this was announced as a 3D Kirby game, I popped off reacting to it with my friends. I was so excited. I was like, holy shit, they are doing it. It's finally a 3D platforming Kirby. And at first, the idea of it not being like an open world thing and it being more level based was something that I was like, oh, that's kind of disappointing. I take that completely back now. After experiencing this game, every fucking level in this game is memorable. Every level of this game has so much layers to it, with the added tasks of collecting the Wild Ds and just collecting, like, either whether you're collecting the Wild Ds themselves in the level or completing a task that earned you a Wild D. Either way, like, there's so much depth to these levels because of that. Like, I did not miss having like extra levels to unlock that were like just like fun, like 100% things to do. I liked instead that they replaced those with challenges that were genuinely fun experiences and helped you get familiar with the various different abilities and mouthful modes. Speaking of mouthful mode, such a fun invention for this for Forgotten Land. Like it's such a like a silly mechanic, and it obviously, like, it's been memed to death, but like, though playing around with those abilities really like brought Kirby to another level, and I think really made it that much more fun. Playing around with the combat in this game, is so much fun. Like the dodge mechanic, and then like I don't know, like just the various abilities. I understand that for a lot of people were disappointed by like the lack of variety, that there wasn't as many abilities in this game as compared to others. I'm kind of cool with it. I like the fact that it was that you had the abilities and then you could go and upgrade them. I thought that was a really cool idea. I hope in the future that they do expand on the amount of abilities that you have for these type of games. But for a first 3D Kirby game to it be this good, and I haven't even brought up Waddle Dee Town and what an amazing base it is, and how much fun it is just to vibe in the town, whether you're playing around with the various mini games, or you go to the arena, or you're just hanging out at your house and you decorate your house with the different trophies. Like, it's just it is such a perfect once again, another celebration of Kirby in a lot of ways, but it stands out so much as being a game that, like, every ounce of it, there was so much love poured into Kirby. And I love that we live in a time right now with Kirby that its two most recent mainline entries in Planet Robot and Forgotten Land are the best that the series has to offer. I mean, I'm putting my feelings of Superstar Ultra aside, like, cause I as much as I love that game, I could still, as if you're just talking best Kirby games, I think you could make the argument that it's between Planet Robot and Forgotten Land, and it might not be close. Like, I think it's between those two, and I think you can make a great argument for both. I think that we're just in such a great time for the franchise, and it makes me so excited to see what the next mainline entry is. I don't really care if it's a 2D game or a 3D game. Like, I feel like I trust the team to do what they feel like is best. Not to say that they don't have, like, a Star Allies in them, or, you know, like, something that is, like, that's just not going to be as special or as unique. I forgot about Star Allies before Planet Robot. Yeah, forgot about it. I forgot that Star Allies came out after Planet Robots. Now, alright. Yeah. Alright, whatever though. But Star Allies, again, like, I liked it. I understand that other people didn't like it, and there's definitely problems with it. But I'm hoping that they've learned their lessons from Star Allies, and that maybe they'll look at something like Planet Robot and be like, okay, this is where we want to go next. This is what we want to focus on next. Is build off of the mechanics of Planet Robot, and let's try something that's going to be a lot more unique, a lot more, you know, that just continues to make... Kirby is at his best when you bring new ideas to the table. And that's, I mean, I guess that's with most games, but when you bring new ideas to the table, a new gimmick to a table that's actually fun, and then you could play around with, like, the various different, like, levels and stuff like that, like, and have the levels be as engaging as they were, especially in Forgotten Land, especially in Planet Robot. Like, I hope that we get more of that in the future, yeah, in some kind, and just give us more. Just bring more to the table. Bring us more abilities. Expand on the ideas with the 3D universe. Like, I wouldn't be opposed to something that is like an open world game, but I can understand maybe the limitations of the developer or the hardware or whatever that might limit that. Like, whatever the future of Kirby is at, I'm gonna be there for it. Like, I am so excited for whatever is next with Kirby. And Kirby the Forgotten Land pretty much solidified that. And I struggle to find a flaw with the game, and I understand that people do have their gripes with it. I just don't. Like, there is so little things to me that is wrong with Kirby the Forgotten Land. Even if the abilities, there's a lack of abilities, like, I don't really give a shit. I love that you can upgrade the abilities and play around with that. And again, I just think every single level was so impactful. Like like the amusement park, like all three moments of the amusement park where you're just like running through the ruins, or then you're going through like the racetracks, or then you're going through the haunted house, and then you're in the park at night, and you have like these parade of robots going by. Like, those levels stand so far out, like, and then Northeast Frost Street too, and then like, and that whole winter area is just so good as well. Like, I don't know, like, all of it, every single level is just incredible, especially when you get near the end too, and then you get like the enemy rush level where you have like a bunch of enemies that you have to fight, but it's not necessarily bosses. But then you have a true boss like stretch of a true boss level where you have like 3 bosses of worlds coming together in one place, and you have to fight 3 of them in a row, where it's like the armadillo and the gorilla and then the sexy cat, like all it's all happening there, and it just is so much fun. It's so exciting, and then you play around with the mouthful mode abilities in that level as well. So good. It's just so good. I could go on and on for hours talking about Kirby the Forgotten Land. It is one of my favorite games of all time, easily, and I'm just so excited to see what the future of Kirby is, because I feel like this is just such a great place to like move from after just such a great entry. But anyways, that's that. The other, so then if you haven't figured it out, the other Kirby game on that's not on this list of the mainline is Kirby 64. I hated Kirby 64, if I'm being honest. I think it has a cute aesthetic, but man, Kirby's so slow in that. Like, Kirby is usually slow, but man, Kirby's really slow. Like, he feels like a fucking rock in that game, and I hated moving around in those levels. Absolutely hated Kirby 64 in that vein. So that would have been bottom of the list if I had all 13 on here. And in terms of like spin-offs, if I were to have put them on this list, like, I could see like Kirby Star Allies and Kirby's Dream Land getting knocked off for the Kirby Dream Buffet and Kirby's Dream Course games. I think would probably go in would be put on the list. Not high though. Like, not I prefer the mainline games overall. So yeah, those games would probably end up there. And again, I want to go back to Epic Yarn. I may or may not go back to Kirby's Canvas Curse. I actually have to see if I even own Canvas Curse still. I may have sold it. I may have missed out my opportunity on that. But yeah, I'll look into it. But yeah. Anyways, folks, thank you all so much for listening. This is probably, you might be watching this in isolation, but if you're watching this when this comes out, later this week I will probably be streaming Mail Time, which is a game I've been super anticipating, and I played the demo for during our Steam Demo Fest spectacular. And so I am super excited to play that game in its entirety and see how it is. So stay tuned for that. But with that, folks. Oh, and I also should do a gameplay vlog or game vlog in general. We haven't done one in a month or so. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Anyways, thank you all so much for tuning in. Let me know in the comments below what your favorite Kirby game is, why you love it so much. They're all great. I love every single one of them, really. I mean, even the ones that I like kind of disdain. Like, there's aspects of it that I'm like, man, Kirby's cool. And so tell me what your favorite Kirby game is. And then yeah, like the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you want more content from me, which is mostly short video or like one-off videos on games, full playthroughs of games, and top 10s, and the occasional vlog where I talk about the games I've been playing and how much I enjoy them. So if you like hearing my voice, there you go. Subscribe for more. Anyways, thank you all so much for listening, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.